Yeah, just one quick thing before we wrap this up. I'm just curious. It's like a hypothetical. So let's say Hudson Odoi decides against staying at Chelsea and wants to leave. What do you think are the ramifications of those actions? Joe, like, what's your thoughts on that?
Um,
Like, could Chelsea
I,
afford for someone like him to leave?
I don't think they can. I mean, I think it's one of the sort of points that a lot of people will make to me. I mean, talking about, I always kind of been quite vocal this season, but I think Loftus-Cheek should look to leave the club just to get a fresh start and be treated a bit more equally. But the club would be looking for a ridiculous fee for him. In terms of his age, his potential. He's an England international, etc. So I think that the club kind of sort of value them in sort of some respects. But in others, in terms of being like equal citizens, kind of equal sort of, contributors to the first team squad, I think until that happens, I think we're going to be in situations that we see a lot of these younger players leaving it. They're doing it at a younger age now. So, I think Sue is incredibly sort of apt and very obviously in tune with a lot of how this works behind the scenes. But if Chelsea start losing players, let's say Panzo is the baseline of talent that Chelsea can't afford to lose, because he might not be a Chelsea player in the future, but an English centre back, got a lot of potential, potentially pretty good play, probably selling for about £5 to £10 million to a Championship club, for example. If he's the baseline of talent that we have, and we're starting to lose a lot of players of that kind of talent, so you've got Mark Guehi, who also probably is similar ability. Trevor Chalobah, who's probably better than them. You've got a lot of these young players who have come through and started winning things with England at a young age, and now kind of becoming a little bit more established in their profile. I think it's the financial ramifications only when Chelsea feel that at the bottom line. When they, that's going to be when the kind of penny sinks in. And let's say, Hudson Odoi leaves Chelsea and realises his like immense potential, and he becomes, let's say, maybe a couple of levels, below Kylian Mbappe, for example. So like a real game changer, really top level talent. And let's say Man City go and buy him. That we got rid of De Bruyne and they bought De Bruyne for 50 million quid, for example. How does that then affect Chelsea? Because not only have you lost out on the fact that he is now worth X millions of pounds, but you've also given a direct rival a team, a direct player to a rival who is going to benefit them in the long term. So I think, sadly for Chelsea, it's purely black and white. Until they start feeling it in terms of the the kind of financial side of things, I don't think that they will really care. And I think that's actually quite a bad way to look at it. And I think Sue's right. The difficulty will be in how much this FIFA rule about the restriction on the amount of loan players you can send out. That is going to be something that could significantly alter the direction of Chelsea as a club, because we've got. In a summer where I think a lot of people that I spoke to at the club said that Chelsea were trying to reduce the number of loan players and get rid of a lot of deadwood, they ended up with 40 players out on loan, and that was with an effort to reduce that number of players. So, if we can only loan out 10 players in the future, for example, that's 30 players just sitting there that you're paying that aren't getting better, aren't in a shop window, aren't accruing value, aren't, whatever you want to say in terms of the model. That's what Chelsea are trying to do with some of these players. So the fact that that's going to happen, there are guys who have been at Chelsea. I mean, who's the goalkeeper that we had been here for like nearly 10 years, never ever played for Chelsea, never was going to play for Chelsea. But I mean, the amount of money that we've paid him, in terms of sort of salary and stuff like that is insane. And to bring all those guys back into the books and not be able to offset their costs somehow, either through a loan fee or kind of negating some of their wages with another club, it's going to be huge. It's going to be a huge impact on the club. So, it's going to be one of those things that I wish the club were more forward thinking about this sort of stuff. If they could maybe put a plan in place now and start trying to put that into action by the time that, if this legislation comes in, they'll be kind of prepared for it. I just fear that the way that we act sometimes, we don't act until the last minute, and we're going to have a situation where we've got 60 first team aged players on the books, and we can only get rid of 10 of them. We're going to have this gigantic squad of 50 players where we've got an under 23 team which is comprised of 11 internationals or whatever. It's going to be ridiculous. So there's a lot I think that Chelsea need to think about, particularly, as I said, if this ruling about loan players comes in, because we are one of the biggest benefactors of the current system, and we've kind of really gamed it and perfected that way of running the club. But I think that the sad reality will be, and probably something that C will probably say as well, is that the financial side will completely dictate the opinion that Chelsea take on this. So as kind of callous and economical and sort of very analytical as that is, I think until the bottom line is hit, then I don't think that they will really care.
Yeah, just to jump in, there are 3 players that out of one of these 3 players, you got to get one of them right. You got to get one of these 3 players to be integrated in Chelsea in the next couple of years. And those 3 players are Hudson Odoi, Mason Mount, and Reece James at Wigan. I honestly think one of those has to break through, or Chelsea are going to experience some awfully unfortunate fallouts with their youth program if one of those 3 players does not break through. They're not going to get the same type of youth talent. They are not going to benefit from the system financially as much. One of those 3 players has to break through. They have to. Reece James is awfully underlooked because, of course, he's a defender. But remember, last year he was the Academy Player of the Year. He's killing it in the championship right now. And I say those 3 players as well because they're probably the 3 best loanees Chelsea have. But there's also potential openings for all of those players. Reece James right now is playing it right back in the championship. As Piliqueta's not having the greatest year so far. I love him, but you have to start looking at maybe a future replacement at right back. Chelsea have like a few right backs possibly for the future, but Reece James certainly needs to be considered in that spot. We talked about Mason Mount in that other midfield spot. There's a potential opening for him because of what he brings, not because of the other players. In fact, it's clouded, but still what he brings, there's a spot for him. And Hudson Odoi over Willian, Pedro, and Moses? Yes, please. So there are openings for those players too, potentially. It's not just that they're the 3 best prospects and we have to figure out this crazy way to get them integrated. There are very simple ways to get them integrated. So with this whole new loan rule and everything, if Chelsea strike out on all 3, not good. Really not good.
Yeah, I agree. I personally think too that if Hudson Odoi does leave, that's really going to affect how the loan army does operate in the future. Yeah. I think that a lot of players will consider about even joining Chelsea in the first place. I didn't be miss out. Did someone? I think someone said something about 2 under-16s leaving or something because they were worried. That was you, Joe, wasn't it?
Yeah, Joe.
Is he still there?
What was that, Nini? Sorry, mate.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was saying. Did he make that point about 2 under-16 players leaving?
Yeah. So we had, obviously Chelsea want to retain as much English talent in the academy as possible. And they offered, I think, 2, I'm not going to say that they're the 2 best prospects in this age group, but I mean, they are obviously the England internationals at under 16 level. They're both very good players. And Chelsea offered them, scholarship or, academy, their first kind of professional terms, and they were turned down. They're looking for other professional clubs now. And I don't think that they're going to struggle to go and find another Premier League club. They're England internationals. They're obviously incredibly well thought of. So, but it's the fact that even players now at sort of 15, 16 are questioning the pathway. They're questioning, what's ahead of them, at 16, that to me is incredibly worrying. And that's what I think the club have, that's where it gets a little bit, for me, a red flag. Someone at the club should be saying, hang on a minute, these kids should be, dying to sign their first professional contract at Chelsea. They should be completely enthralled, completely in love with the club, completely want to play there. These again I think these 2 in particular, I can't remember their names, but when I was talking to my guy about them, again, been at the club since like 5-6 years old, been at the club for almost 12 years, or, they've been there an incredibly long time. And they've just gone because they don't really see there's a development pathway for them in the future. These kids are now looking at 18-year-olds and saying, at 18, I can play in the Championship. I can play for a Premier League team or something like that. In their head, they're that confident in their ability that's what they're looking at. And if we have a lot of these kids in the future who are, let's say, we've got 10 good prospects in that under 16 setup, and the top 3 of them leave, then we won't keep seeing all these FA Youth Cup victories and all of this sort of stuff that the club's really proud of, because our best prospects are going to go elsewhere. So, for me, it's a little bit of a red flag, and I think it's something the club need to maybe try and monitor a bit, because you can't have this huge wave of negativity throughout the academy, because there has to be something at the end of the tunnel for them. There has to be some realistic opportunity to play for Chelsea. Otherwise, what's the point of being there to start with?
Yeah, they need to see examples of